for coming along. I'm going to do a talk on practical threat modeling and agile projects. I think I did this talk 12 months ago, and when I was kind of developing it, I thought, hold on, I'm going to be standing in front of a room of security experts talking about threat modeling. Surely it's kind of teaching my granny how to suck eggs. And I thought, everyone's going to know exactly all that I'm talking about, and they're not going to gain anything useful. And then I realised every single engagement that I work on, every single team I work with, every project I worked on, still had huge problems with this stuff. And although you might have a security person who knew it really well, they were probably outnumbered 500 to 1 by developers, and they weren't part of any of the projects. So my background is in development, and as I moved into security, that's kind of my speciality, I suppose, and the stance that I put everything is how do we take the things that security experts learn and know and share with each other, and how do we actually fit it into what development teams are doing, how projects are organised, and how Agile works. So that's kind of what we'll go through today. We'll do a practical exercise, try and figure out exactly, we're not just going to talk about something, we're going to try and do it together. So I'll need some volunteers later on. So anyone who's feeling a bit energetic, I'd love your help, thank you. So like I said, my name is Chris Rutter, I come from a development background. I'm currently a platform security engineer, working for Equal Experts at HMRC. I've got experience in payments, retail banking and government, all completely different places to work, as I'm sure you guys will know, with completely different kind of security needs and completely different implementations in almost everything. So hopefully this should be a bit of learnings I've had doing threat modeling and implementing security throughout all of those environments. So when I wrote this talk 12 months ago, I was in the midst of quite a challenging environment. I'm sure you guys have probably been in this kind of environment, where I was in an enterprise organization, huge enterprise, but they were doing like an agile transformation project. So I'm sure most companies had this issue where they realize, especially enterprise, where they realize it's taken us 18 months to deliver stuff that we're not going to compete with the market. We're scared to death of all the fintech. PSD2 was just around the corner and open banking. I tell you what, let's hire a team of kind of DevOps engineers. Let's use the cloud. Let's do for them it's buzzword bingo. For everybody else, yeah man, we've been doing this stuff for years. And basically, okay, someone is convinced their boss's boss to commission this project. So you've got 12 weeks or whatever, say you've got 6 months to really deliver something shiny, something that's all the things that you tell us Agile can do. It's reactive, it's going to subvert the market, we're going to be able to put it on BBC News and kind of show it off. And we're going to do it with all these Agile things you've been telling us about, and we're going to do it with the user stories, and you've told us if we do that, we're going to get something knocked out the door really quickly, and we can put it in the hands of our superiors, and everything's going to be peachy. Now, it's quite a unique security challenge. It's kind of the same, imagine if you're a startup, it would be almost the same, right? You've got to get something delivered before your cash runs out. In the enterprise, I guess it's the same. You've got to get something out there before your boss says, well, this isn't working, let's go back to the old way. One of the differences with the startup and with the enterprise is I think with the enterprise, you've usually got a kind of very established set of security requirements. You've got sign-offs and you've got compliance documents, and you've got a very kind of heavyweight, can take 4, 6, 8 weeks to do these kind of things. At a startup, you don't really have that. It's just kind of fast and loose. If you're in fintech, you're probably going to get to the point though where you have to do PCI compliance or some kind of regulatory compliance. So you still run up against this, oh crap, we've got to get security done now. And what generally happens is it's done right at the end in both a startup and a startup within an enterprise. So we look at our MVP features, we create all the user stories, we estimate the stories. We don't really document that much. People use Agile, kind of as a way to just not do any documentation sometimes, which I don't think that's really what they meant when they created Agile. But we just say, oh, let's just knock something out. It'll be super agile. No one needs to know how it works except us, because And then right at the end, they'll say, all right, we've all been agile, we've all been working together, and we've built a cloud platform. Everything's been great, and they hand it all off to a security team, who are well stuck in the enterprise model, still working on much longer timescales with much kind of more outdated tools. They haven't done any documentation or anything like that, and they just say, right, we've got something. Can you just sign it off for me, please? And the project manager say, oh, well, it's security is a bureaucratic thing, right? It's a 1 week sign off, of course. Yeah. What do you think happens? Hands up if you've ever been here before. Yeah, hands up if you think you'll be here again. Okay, so just to kind of give an example as to, I guess, why that happens. So this is, if we kind of go to the development life cycle, this is, I just put a chart together in Excel, I think. And this is basically, to me, all of the different tasks. You talk about definition of done in Agile a lot, and it's, every user story has to have the certain criteria met before it can go live. So this is generally the tasks that, to me, are involved in putting something into production or giving it to the customer. So you develop your code with developers, you test it, whether automated or manual, integrate it with other components, other microservices, you demo it to your stakeholders, and then you do some UAT with internal kind of customers. This is generally what your teams will be getting up to in the kind of model that I just said earlier on. They're probably not doing documentation, they're certainly not doing any kind of security review, because there's no security people there in the team. The pen test, that's probably part of your enterprise sign-off process. It's probably going to be part of any kind of PCI compliance or other regulatory compliance you have to do. Fixing any vulnerabilities that come out of a pen test, you're going to have to do before you go to customers. And then you reach the prod, and then you deliver to customers. Anyone got any more that I've missed, or does that look pretty familiar to everyone, I guess? So this is what happens in my experience. You get to week 10 in your 12-week project, and every single week, we're doing these things. We're getting to the point, we're integrating a few microservices here, we're demoing to stakeholders, we're doing some UAT, it's going to like a set of internal customers. There's a hell of a lot of work here that we haven't done by week 10. We've got 2 weeks left for the project to go live. Again, I'm sure you've all seen this kind of stuff. So I guess part of what I try to do when I'm working with teams on this stuff is to at least get this stuff done a lot earlier. And threat modeling, I find, is one of the best tools to do that. So we'll go into kind of an example of how that can work. So this is this is an explanation of what I think happens in this case. I've had this happen to me. I'm sure you've had it happen to you. You have like a security design review at the end when someone just whips together all this documentation, throws it over the wall. Someone says, you're not doing this to company standards, you're not encrypting properly, your design doesn't follow the patterns that we need. You might have some genuine security vulnerabilities that you haven't got authentication on your database or something. Like I said, the standards, you're not doing SQL management properly. You've done a penetration test and there's been major vulnerabilities found. Generally, everyone gets a bit angsty at this point. Everyone hates security. They're blocking us. Why didn't they tell us all this stuff beforehand? Why didn't you tell them? Why didn't you get them involved? Then what generally happens is people just say, all right, solid, we'll fix the high ones, and we don't have time to fix the rest of them. So it's almost like the risk acceptance is going to be like the primary outcome of this every single time, rather than actually, proactively fixing these things when you've got the chance. So yeah, it's delivered late, it's less secure, and everyone hates security. To me, it's kind of inevitable that happens. You can't do 12 weeks worth of work in an agile way and then throw it over the wall to a non-agile security team and expect everything to be peachy. So some of the kind of techniques that we developed at this enterprise, again, it's probably nothing new. Threat modeling isn't something you guys have never heard about, but I think the way we did it was quite innovative, and it worked. Basically, we started delivering on time in this challenging environment. So basically, we'd make sure we threat model with developers at the whiteboard stage. We made sure, more importantly, we did threat models in a kind of very micro, kind of modular kind of way, in the way that they were working. So we realized that a developer could be whiteboarding a design on Monday, writing the code for it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then getting it tested, and then, they'd want to kind of sign and seal it by the Tuesday. So if you want to have any input on the design of these things, if you want to have any ability to influence or educate or even build documentation as you go, you need to be doing this on their kind of schedules, which is every week sometimes. Not let's get 6 weeks worth of work and do a threat model at the end, or let's tell you to design 6 weeks ahead, because they're not thinking that far ahead. It's not the way these teams are working. We want to reduce sign-off time. So this is kind of a big sell for the project teams who have to invest in the security expertise and the time taken to do this threat modeling. So you tell them, look, and it's true, you're not lying to them. If you do this stuff that I'm telling you, it'll take a few hours a week, and I guarantee that your sign-off at the end of the project will be a week. Your sign-off will not be 6 weeks like it was last time. You're building trust between the devs, the ops, and security. I think generally, the closer you work with people, the more trust you build. It doesn't have to be like a special activity to build trust, like paintballing or something. I think you just, as you work with these people, it gets a bit demystified, and you tend to kind of respect them professionally rather than just them being the person who pisses you off by blocking your project. And again, the more you work with people, the more the developers are educated. So this all sounds like great stuff, and I can tell you all day long, yeah, like, this stuff sounds good. No one's going to argue about it. But I'm going to show you how I find threat modeling is just a really, really good way to get more of these benefits than any other tool that I've seen. If you do it in a way that the developers kind of can fit with. So the first thing you need, obviously, is some kind of resource. So if you just tell developers, okay, do some threat models, maybe you'll get some really, really security conscious developers who've done it in a past life, but you can't really rely on that, and you're probably not going to get that many of them. So in reality, you need some security expertise to do these threat models, at least in the first few months, to train them up. So this was my ideal kind of team setup. Developers and testers, say DevOps is embedded. DSO just means like DevSecOps or security champion. To me, that's somebody who's kind of like a developer who's got an interest in security, maybe a bit of knowledge. More importantly, they're a point of contact. They're the person you can do the threat models with. They've got most of their feet in the development side, but they've got a relationship with security as well. So they're an active developer. Then I think you need a subject matter expert. You need like a security professional, really. And if you're trying to knock out a brand new product in 12 weeks or 16 weeks with this many developers, the bosses might say, well, we're not going to invest in one security person per 18 developers. And I'd say, well, you're going to have to, mate. Otherwise, you're going to get what we saw before. You're going to get like massive delays in your project time. If you've got loads of these teams knocking out software, you can't do it with a team of five security people, based in a different office. You're going to have more resource on hand with technical skills to work with them week in, week out. And if you're in an enterprise environment, you've got this dotted line. Now, to me, this is like the IT function. This is like the guys who deal with audit. These are the guys who have to do sign off, I guess, and governance. You're always going to have that as well. You need an SME who understands this kind of stuff, understands risk, understands evidence, understands audit. You can have different flavours of this, but I think if you want to be really fast-paced in this kind of environment, what I'm trying to say is you need this ratio of kind of technical security to developers. Some 1 to 20, whatever, 1 to 30, something like that. Yeah, just explaining what I just said there. These are the roles that I would say each of those people have. Security SME is typically a cybersecurity architect, security engineer, just maybe an ex-pen tester. There's somebody who's got technical security skills. DevSecOps security champion is just a developer who is kind of your eyes and ears in the development team. Okay, so this is the kind of workshop element. So I guess the plan is to do a threat model together. This could go really well, or this could go totally tits up. So I'm going to put it onto you guys. So if it goes badly, I'm just the curator here now. So, threat model is a hot topic. I've seen some great talks on it recently. I'm sure everyone does it slightly differently. And we're going to use Stride, so it's a kind of common approach to doing it. How many of you, put your hands up, how many do you actually do threat models kind of day in, day out as part of your jobs? Yeah, I saw your talk, it was really good, so I know you do them. And how many of you have kind of agree or have heard that threat model is kind of a very effective tool to build security into Agile processes? All right, good. So hopefully this should turn kind of something that is a good idea into, well, I've kind of done one now, and hopefully we've seen how it can be effective. So I've created a backlog here as an example of what that project would look like. And this is kind of, this is loosely based on real projects that I've worked on in the past. So it's a fintech app. This could be an app that's from within a bank itself, trying to give its users a new kind of experience, a new way to gain insights on their own financial data. It's read-only at the moment, or it could be a third party who's trying to leverage open banking or PSD2 to do the same thing for their customers using their bank account providers. So to have a quick read through everyone and just have a look and see what we're going to try and develop. standard kind of functionality set. You know, at the end of this, a user can log on and they can see how much they spend on different things, and they can see whether they're spending more money than they earn. Basic financial insight. The reason I put these in bold is it's tricky with threat modeling because it can be such a time-consuming exercise. You know, you don't. It's not like static analysis where you can kind of mandate that every single line of code has to be statically analyzed. You can't really say every single user story has to be threat modeled, because some user story might be change an image, change copy, and you're not really going to win friends and influence developers if you impose threat models on that kind of thing. So I found a very effective way is that you have like a triage session. So you have your security SME. Eventually your security champions can do this when you trust them, or there's trust there. And you go through every user story they're going to take in that week, and you figure out whether or not you think it should be threat modeled or not. So we're threat modeling at the user story level here. Now I've bolded these out because I think you can tell it's pretty obvious you want to threat model these ones. Again, you'll find as projects go in different phases, you'll do a lot more threat modeling at the beginning as they're defining architectures. And then as they tail off to each chunk of functionality, you'll do a lot less. And then they'll say, right, now we want to make payments happen. And then you're going to do a hell of a lot more threat modeling for the first couple of weeks. And then you'll do a lot less. If you've got that model we said before with one SME and 3 teams, hopefully that evens itself out. You know, one team's doing new stuff, the other team's maintaining, and that kind of thing. But it does rely on a triage kind of model. And in the past, after we do the triage, I've just put a comment on a user story saying this has been triaged, this was the result. Yeah?
And some of these can be put into like a threat model strategic architecture as such. So a series of threat model patterns you can pull out. Like a lot of these things you can say, okay, they're patterns we're going to reuse for the general thing. So you just create a pattern, model pattern, and then you reuse that, and that helps accelerate the process too.
That's 100%. So I mean, I looked at this backlog, and this story here, you know, we're gonna connect to open banking using OIDC. I mean, I don't think it's really that useful threat modeling OIDC or Auth2 every time you implement it, because people have done a much better job than you're going to do. The useful part, the way I find threat modeling, it's not just about trying to find the threats, it's just about exposing the developers to thinking and that mindset as well. And even just giving the security person early insight into what the design is and early ability to influence the design. So, you know, you might know there's 500 threats in Auth, but even if you do threat modeling at the beginning, when you find 10 big ones, and you help the developers to factor that into their projects and put them in, that's probably a net increase of 10 threats that you've mitigated than they would have done before. And even then, you know, even though there's threat models of Auth, I've seen people design some horrible misuses of it. You know, I've seen people get client tokens that they store in mobile apps, and you know, and design that they give them off to third parties, and you know, crazy ways of bastardizing what the protocol's supposed to do. So that doesn't even fit in with threat model really to me. It's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's like, guys, we're the experts here, we can help you do it. So anyway, what we'll do is together if we can, we'll take this first story. I know it's a little bit of, you know, it's a small chunk here. It's basically just create an account, log in with the username and password, and together we'll try and threat model it and see what comes out. And more importantly, see how we can kind of fit that into the rest of the project. Okay. Yeah, so that's basically the ones that we've looked at to threat model. Alright, so sprint 1. So this is week 1 of the project. What we want is we want the developers and the security subject matter expert to sit and whiteboard the designs together. Or at least for the developers to whiteboard the designs, and then for the kind of security champion very quickly the day after or something to do it with the security SME. So, you know, if the SME is not available, you don't want to tell developers you can't whiteboard anymore, but the SME should be involved, you know, that week basically, or as quickly as possible. Should be sitting with the team, understanding that that's what they're working on, getting stuck into the design as quickly as they can. So I need some volunteers.
Right.
So I need volunteers for developer, I need a volunteer for kind of security SME. So I want somebody who's going to design this architecture for me and just draw kind of a logical architectural diagram. And then I want someone who's going to help threat model it. And obviously you guys can all kind of input with that. So who wants to be a developer?
I'll volunteer for either.
Do you want to be developer or SME or?
Doesn't matter. Which one you want me to do?
Who else? I need two players here. Come on, guys. I'll help out as well. Anyone else? Come on. Who used to be a developer? Oh! Alright.
I'll be a developer because I used to be a developer. I'm still a developer, so I can do that.
I can do the developer if you want. You can do the SME. If anything is insecure, it's on purpose, right? I'm just testing you guys, okay? Should we move this in the middle, do you think? Or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Okay, yes. Our requirement is a user. Oh, that worked well. Wow. Totally planned.
Very nice.
Alright, so our requirement is that a user can create an account and log in with username and password. So we said it's a mobile app. So this is the way I threat model. It might be different to the way you guys do it. But I start with a kind of, I call it a communication diagram. I'm not even sure if it is a communication diagram, but
Process diagram?
yeah, it's just to kind of show what the architecture is like.
Yeah.
As a byproduct of doing this is documentation, right? It's lightweight, it's probably in draw.io or something, but this is building up documentation, and it's 3 days into the project. And it's sufficient quality that it can be used for security.
Are we doing this during Spike, basically?
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
just, well, this is, in some projects this will be sprint 1, it's just like take on the story and start designing shit.
Yeah.
Whereas some projects it'll be
During
sprint
Spike.
0, let's do
Yeah.
Spike or whatever. So okay, I guess I've got I've got my diagrams. It's kind of a mobile app, right? It's kind of a mobile device.
A mouth or a button?
There we go.
He's a kind of model.
I've got a user. Can I make it a woman somehow? Yeah, it's a user. So then what do I want to do? Create an account, log in with username and password. So I guess I'm going to have some kind of service here. So I'm probably doing microservices here. So I'm saying user microservice. And I want to create a username and password. That's going to have to store it in a database somewhere. Let's have a look. I've probably got a DevOps person in the room, so maybe I'm putting this behind an API gateway. Does anyone know what the symbol for that is? Amazon API gateway?
It's got 3 layers, and then an L, like do an L, I think, in 3 layers.
Nobody knows any of
Or
the
it's a
icons
box
from
with
Amazon.
Yeah.
And then do an L to, I think that's it.
Yeah?
I think, something like that.
Nobody knows their icons. There's so many.
So that diagram is shocking, but you can kind of see what I mean. Okay, so and then I'll probably just go kind of loose sort of trust boundaries here. So I've got or data flow, sorry. So I've got the user going into the app. So they're gonna be presented with a registration screen. They're gonna put their chosen email address and password in there. The app's gonna then send it through the API gateway into my user microservice, and the user microservice is gonna save it in the database. Suppose the trust boundaries here is I've got kind of, this is all part of my stack. Now imagine you're sitting with developers. The developers are kind of drawing this off here on a whiteboard. And you start asking things like informally, alright, so where's the database hosted? You know, is it kind of managed by you? Is it in your VPCs? Or is it hosted as a third party? You know, is it managed? Is it
In
kind
the
of
cloud.
Mongo Atlas or something like that?
Is it? Yeah. Is it on the cloud? Are you guys have it hosted locally? Or do you guys have it hosted somewhere else?
So we're going to say this is a cloud database, so we want it to be managed by someone else.
And
guess this-
what's the target application that we're looking at? We're looking at iOS. We're looking at Android. Both.
We'll say iOS because I know better.
Okay.
So we'll say rough trust boundaries there between the user and the device, and then the API gateway and the user microservice, and then the user microservice and the database. So this to me is the kind of process communication diagram.
That's a bad person. Black hat.
So this is my user story, and developers, you know, this is probably what a developer would draw around a whiteboard. To be honest, this is the kind of thing you get, and we're going to put this in a draw.io, and that's the start of our security documentation. So now we're going to threat model this. So this is sprint 1. This is still the first week of the project, and we're going to get the security person to come in, and we're going to start threat modeling this architecture. So this is right at the beginning of the project. You're getting security input. This is
And let's say you guys are all security people, because I don't want to be doing this all on my own.
So we can do it together.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously that's what I do, but I want to get everyone else to help out. So, what would everyone say the first thing we should look at then, right here?
Database.
Database? Why is that?
Connection to it. If the traffic between it and the service is done over TLS connections, if you're restricting access to database from your endpoints,
Okay, so we've got a few
if you
questions.
have credentials from there to talk to the database,
So you said
remember all the
TLS,
database exposed to the world.
question, connection. Question, what was the other one you had?
Authentication.
And identity, okay.
SQL
Identity?
injection.
Okay, SQL injection, so we're talking of code.
Parameterized.
I'm sorry, what was the other one?
Is it parameterized input?
Parameterized input, right, so we say input.
So I think usually what I do in this stage is if we want to kind of get a balance between fact finding for the security engineer, and you also want a kind of repeatable process for the developers, so that they feel like they're getting the same
And that's where we're getting
experience.
stride.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you want both really. You know, Stride's great, but it's not going to find everything. And a lot of the, you know, I think in your talk you mentioned a lot of these things you only find, a lot of the columns you only find much anyway.
Yeah.
You know, they're very kind of, there's a pattern to these things.
Yeah.
But then you still need some kind of process, and you need some way of evidencing, you know, that you've done a comprehensive investigation
Exactly.
as well. So usually as we're going on, we're starting to figure out, well, database straight away, that's kind of warning signs.
Yeah.
But we're also
So
going to go through a
we've
kind of
dipped
process.
quite quickly into technical. Should we not just ask the developers what the process is?
That's what yeah.
What's the user going to see? What's the user going to experience?
Exactly. So the next thing we do is we've got this kind of communication diagram, and the next thing I do is I just draw a sequence diagram. So then we get more of an accurate kind of idea of where this data is flowing around. So if we kind of just start with a quick sequence diagram.
Okay.
So we've got. You can have different kind of swim lanes for the user and the device. I think for this exercise we'll probably just keep them as one. You know, there could be concerns there. So if we just do a quick swim lanes. So we've got what? We've got the
Registration.
mobile.
Registration, you said?
Yeah, the registration screen.
Yeah.
So we've got mobile app there, sequence diagram here. So then we've got the API gateway. Then we've got the microservice,
And the database.
and then we've got the DB at the end.
So do we want to do registration? Do we want to do just a standard, that's the question we had, or do we want to do
Yeah.
a standard login? Which one do we want to do? Do we want to do both of them?
Yeah, so I think for this one, I mean, the use case that I thought up is that you would create a user account on this app, which was kind of your relationship with the fintech company, and then you would authenticate yourself through OAuth, open banking to all your different accounts. So this one is, we get a screen on the mobile app,
Mm-hmm.
which asks us for an email address and a password, and to confirm the password, and then we send that to the server and we register a user account.
Okay.
And then we can log in with that as well. So we need the ability to
So
be
you're
able
going
to
to
kind of
need
log in.
two layers basically on this, aren't you?
So if we start off with the mobile app, so we go in and so if we say we've got a screen here, registration screen. So usually with a mobile app, I mean that's within the code. It's not like HTML that I'm rendering or anything. So there's usually less to worry about than if it was a web page. You might put that as a separate interaction. So I'm going to go. Say I've been given the form fields here, and it's asking me for an email address and username and password. So this is number one. I'm sending my email address and my username and password through to the API gateway. And it's going to the API gateway to the microservice, the user service. The user service is going to be doing some kind of validation on there now, which is going to say, okay, does this user exist? Does the password conform to whatever policy I have? And then if correct, it's going to then save those details in the database. What it's then going to do is it's going to create some kind of session for me, because now I've registered right, I'm logged in. It's going to send back the session.
Sorry, quick question. If the user service does some kind of validation, if the user exists, wouldn't it have to check that on the database?
It's a good point.
No.
Okay, so
So it's kind of
let's change that.
in itself.
Yeah, there is.
I
Right
suppose
here.
there might be. Let's have a look. Yeah. So if this one was the checking the database, this was the validation.
And writing the credentials.
Then we'll create the session. Then we'll write the credentials and create.
No, it's the other way around. It's fine.
Okay, so this one, we've got the credential, we've got the existing users list here. We've done the validation. Then we've created a user account and a session in memory, and then we've written them to the database. Is that about right? Then we've came back to the user, I guess with some kind of session token.
That's useful.
So I think this, yeah.
I'm sorry, with the current flow with the database, the validation after checking the database, when we passing unvalidated data straight to the database?
Good point. So you think we should put a
First
layer there,
validation
kind of
and then check the
pre-validation?
database.
Even then, you should do that at that level first. Not just that, but you should build some there.
That's one of those tests I was telling you about. Well done, you passed. Okay, so let's enumerate these and kind of get cracking. How are we doing for time?
It's fine.
It's 35 past.
Go. Let's get some light.
Aziz, nice.
Okay, so we got one here. I'm tempted just to blend these two to one. Sorry. Yeah, these workshops are never as slick as a proper presentation, so bear with me. I'm tempted just to put these two as number one, to be honest. I'm tempted just to put everything through the API gateways. There's one logical flow. So we've got one, which is send the passwords. 2, do the validation. 3, connect to the database.
There's also some validation within the app itself for the what's an email, what's the password.
Yeah,
Don't
but
trust
that's-
that,
I mean,
but should do that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's just local validation. You wouldn't want to.
So the more you
That's
do,
more semantic than anything else.
yeah, the more you do these things, the more you'll get a feel for what's going to throw up things that you care about and what isn't. But that's probably personal, to be honest, personal preference as you do these things. Depending on that could even depend on what your risk appetite is or how sensitive your the environment you're working in is. You know, for this maybe you're right. Maybe we have to start looking at things like that the correct form fields in the mobile app are used and things aren't caching or being saved to screen for any way. So 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this is when I would usually do a stride analysis. But as we go, we're flushing out questions like this, like okay, the database. What database is it? Okay, it's Mongo Atlas. Let's have a look. Is this Amazon? Is it in a VPC? Who's it managed by? Who has admin accounts, all that kind of stuff.
You've jumped very technical again. You've probably, before that, make sure your functionality is right. So before you even worry about what technology you've got behind it all, does that login process fit in with what you want? Because that's single factor.
Yeah.
Is that right? Do you want that?
Yeah, you're probably right, to be honest. I mean,
So that's a core functional.
yeah. In reality, I'd straight away say, look, it has to be 2FA because it's going to hold all these access tokens for everything else that you have. If I'm honest, I kind of trimmed it down just to fit into this presentation. But 100%.
Just call out.
So
look at a functional level, because once you've got the functional level, then you can delve into the technical. You don't want to
Yeah,
do all
yeah.
that and then say, actually, no, we need another connection off to here, another connection off to there.
And you're absolutely right. The developers, if say the developer's done the design on a Monday, he's got the functionality sorted in his head. He's going to come to you, exactly what I've just done, and start drilling into these individual microservices and flow points. And you're going to say, whoa. Doing 2FA? Like, oh, I didn't think we had to. But how great is it that you figure that out on the second day of a project, rather than after 4 weeks of development or 11 weeks of development? This is the main purpose of this exercise. But then the 2 points for me, so you've got one point which is actually improving the security of the project, and then another point which is to be able to provide evidence that you've done so, and provide things like a fully completed stride diagram, and give a uniform level of rigor that can be scaled out to 6,000 development teams around the world.
Well, then let me jump in. I mean, I've seen plenty of teams where they do that, where they dive right into the technical bits before getting a lot of the functional bits down. And I've been involved in those things where I've had to put the brakes on. But part of the whole threat modeling exercise is you also sit there and you say, like, oh great, you've got all these different technologies, all fantastic. And then you start saying, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? What are the external attacks? And as you do the stride analysis, it'll pick up that you haven't done MFA. So, okay, well, maybe we should, because it'll come out during stride analysis as being a vector.
Yeah, I definitely take your point though. It's like we shouldn't be bound by what's on the board. We should definitely be able to step back and say, well, it's what's not on the board that could be an issue.
Yeah.
But this should all come out. You know, it might not be part of the stride analysis, but it'll definitely be a footnote on the email evidence that's sent around is like you need MFA. And then more than that, it'll be a user story that's created, and it'll either have to be accepted as a risk or implemented.
And I think it goes back to that maturity of the process itself and what you mentioned before in terms of the different inputs that you may need from the SME, because at some point the business requirement or data confidentiality requirements should be addressed at that point. And if there is any need maybe for that specific sprint to build technical decisions that we can use for the next one,
Exactly.
you can do it in that phase, but later on you will have maybe an architect that will be taking this forward, or the security SME will take that forward, so they can, for the next sprint, will be clear for everyone how they need to address that.
Exactly. So that's what I'll show in a couple of slides, is how we can take the output of this and create it into like work items. But as we go, let's write these things down. So we've got MFA. That was saying we definitely need. What else have we looked at? What else did we say? Is there anything else that came up so far?
This gentleman right here talked about possibly about looking at the client in more detail.
Yeah. So client validation.
I mean, I was putting in general because maybe it might not just be validation, but it might also be the client architecture.
Definitely. So you know, are they using the keychain properly, or are they storing things that they shouldn't be?
Exactly.
Yeah. And we're going to know a lot more about this because the security people were involved in the beginning. You know, we're watching this thing evolve. We're looking at every user story.
Yeah.
We understand what design decisions are being made. So we quickly start doing a stride analysis. We might not have time to do the full analysis, but
Let's see the most important one,
which is
elevation of privilege.
yeah, we can do that definitely. Where do you have the board on?
Ah, it's right here. You mean the useless thing you used to? Seriously, it doesn't work. It just smears.
This should be okay. So I think we'll keep this one because we're going to base the stride analysis. We'll probably get rid of this. I think we'll understand the architecture now. Okay, so is everybody familiar with strides and what is anybody not familiar with strides? Okay, so anyway, we've got spoofing, tampering, repudiation or non-repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and escalation of privilege, which is a good framework for us to figure out, and a comprehensive framework to figure out what kind of threats our system could be exposed to. Now we know all this stuff, but it's a very, very effective tool to show developers how we think and to have a technical engagement with developers as to why these things are important, rather than just a list of things that they're doing badly that they need to fix.
You know, I found out where that came from. It came from a drinking session. Two guys sat down and were talking about this stuff, and that's how that mnemonic came from.
Aren't all the best things from from training sessions?
Not from drinking coffee.
All right, let's choose a couple of these and let's not do all of them maybe. So I suppose this one, number one, probably going to bundle it with number two to be honest for the initial validation. We'll look at the microservice call to the database, which is number two, and number three, sorry. I think that'll probably be enough for now. Alright, so if we do a stride analysis on this, so spoofing, number 1 and 2. Can anybody think of any threats that are available, any threats that are present with somebody being able to misrepresent who they are as they speak to this microservice and send their username and password?
So if that's doing the validation to see if one exists, you could probably username and enumerate.
Enumeration effect?
Yeah, okay. So, enumeration. So then we say to the developers, do you know about this? Have you built in anything to your project plan to prevent this?
Rate limit?
So
That's not API gateway.
So they probably hadn't before we put this up, but then they go, oh yeah, we can rate limit that, API gateway, that'll do it. Okay, brilliant. So there's another thing on our list. Rate limit. And how are you going to do that? Is it just a global limit, or are you going to look at IP whitelisting, or?
Usually it's based on the connection that you've got, IP address.
Okay, so enumeration and rate limit. Okay, anything else? So I'd probably, with spoofing, you generally get things like subversion of PKI and SSL. So I wonder if, if it's a mobile app, there's a higher chance of somebody getting man-in-the-middle attack if I'm in a coffee shop, for example.
Inserts.
Can I pin certs? I know sometimes it's kind of a dirty technique.
A year ago that would be nice. Today people are falling in disuse for that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think in this case it's reasonable in a mobile app in a which is a much higher chance of man in the middle, and you got more control over the environment. But whatever. So, any other risks? Like, can we with PKI? Is there any other way we can defend against that? About a man in the middle attack to enforce.
You can pin a certificate on the app.
Yeah, so we could pin the certificate on the app.
Keep in mind, someone can just inject against the API, so it's bypassing the app entirely.
Sorry?
They could be injecting directly into the API, bypassing the app entirely.
Yeah. So we've got, there's a control here. So with threat models, we don't have to see all the bad things here, we can actually document the good things that we've got in place. So we'll put that we've got TLS. And then, we can start the conversation as, how are you managing certificates there? Are you going to use Amazon Certificate Manager? Are you going to bring your own? Are you going to rotate them? And then
That becomes a huge conversation point, actually.
Yeah.
Certificate management.
Yeah.
Who does that?
So
I don't.
I do.
Big can of worms.
certificate management, it's something we'll talk about and we'll probably create a user story for. And they're probably just going to do the easiest thing first, but at least it's on the agenda now. It's day 2 of the sprint, and we're talking about stuff that, in my experience, doesn't come out that early.
And part of, what you're already pointing out here is a wonderful thing about threat modeling is you bring this discussion out to the forefront, you get people talking about it, we haven't cut any code, we haven't even started or anything like that, and it really helps out. You don't want to be halfway through the sprint, and that's when you go like, oh, what about certificate management? Oh, geez, why didn't we think of that?
Yeah, and the nice thing, I find when you work with developers in this way, and you say to them like we just did, you say, well, what if somebody was man-in-the-milling you in a coffee shop, and what if they could, misrepresent the key, and what if you sent your password to somebody else? And it's quite, to be honest, we're going to be a target because we're a fintech company. It's not unimaginable that somebody created, a specific script just to do this, or a specific certificate just to do this. You say that to a developer and say, right, you need cert management. They treat it a lot differently than if you just say, you need cert management, or else, right at the end, and it just comes in an email. You'll find that.
Get them to say it?
You find that
Yeah.
they go, oh, actually, that's a technical improvement, that's a technical requirement, rather than a policy requirement that someone I've ever met sends me in an email. And they definitely react differently.
It is funny though, because if you get the developers to think about it and to say it, they get all excited about it.
Of course they do.
If you tell them what to do, whatever.
If you give a developer a policy, they hate your guts.
Yeah,
you give them a
exactly.
problem to solve, and they love you for it. Okay, so we probably won't get through the whole thing. So I guess we move on to tampering. So in my experience, and probably in yours, tampering in most things, I find it's kind of the same sort of TLS and PKI.
Yeah.
But unless it's things that change state, and then you might.
Well, there's also the fact of with some of the tampering we were looking at, we're saying, okay, can actually rate the amount, can actually rate them at what, or we should say throttle the throughput, that kind of thing, what
Yeah.
goes through.
Do you ever start with profiling your threat actors before you jump straight into this to say who's actually motivated and how resourced they are to attack you?
These days on the internet, everyone.
Well, no, but
You both have a point.
there are-
You both have one of the things is interesting because one of the things is everyone's out to get me. So do we just bolster down for the worst possible scenario? What it's like North Korea's going to attack us,
Yeah.
or do we say do we measure it out? Now for fintech, probably it's very important you guys do measure out the threat actors. I mean, for other companies I've worked in, not as important.
But again, just from that external, internal context, your cloud service provider, whoever.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be doing that as part of let's say a sprint session, right? You should be doing that more as an organisational level. I think
It should be more of a strategic thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen that feed into risk.
Frame the context then of
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
I've seen it feed into the kind of risk assessment piece. So after this, the outcome is going to be a list of user stories that we know we have to do. So we're going to get, you have to do hashing of your passwords and you have to do it in a certain way. We're also going to get a list of things like certificate management, which are bigger things we have to talk about. And then they're going to be kind of user stories that track potential work items or potential risks that are going to be accepted. And we're going to get some things that they won't do. It's a 12-week project. We guarantee someone's going to say, let's risk assess this. And that's when your threat actors come in. You say, are you MI5? Well, I'm not going to accept that risk. You say, you know what I mean? You say, I met a guy who worked in Greenpeace and he said, look, we know everyone's just going to hack us. So we accept most of the risks and we just protect this core of what we have. And I think that's my experience when that will come in. Once this is just technical, what could go wrong and how could we fix it? And then when you say should we fix it, that's when you bring that in.
This is defining the threat, and the risk is really articulating how that threat can manifest itself, and you put that in likelihood terms.
And that's when you figure out.
You're pulling somebody else like the risk manager or like that. He's going to say, well, okay, let's actually triage this.
Exactly.
I think one of the problems of doing threat actors too early is it can derail the conversation too much on, oh, that would never happen, or that will, and you can end up spending an hour just talking about, do we need to do certificate pinning, and then you miss the opportunity to get a more broad sweep across the whole thing.
But you get great stories.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great chat, but it's not really productive.
You're right, you're totally right.
It has its place and it has its value, but not necessarily too early on.
So Chris, this is back to your justification for your security SME as part of this process, right? Because that's your interface for example, are we concerned about this particular threat actor group, for example? Because that then comes back to, I don't know, which versions of TLS you accept for this mobile app, for example. Because if you're talking about Suite 2, for example, you can only use A, B, and C, but it shouldn't be your sprint process where you're procrastinating and deciding other things like that.
As you said, it's another story that you bring up and discuss in more details.
Yeah.
We need to find that it's TLS, fine, move on that and block and discuss the details for the search management, for the versions of TLS you want to implement, or a different storyboard.
Yeah.
So usually what I want to get out of this, of the threat modeling, before we have to go on, guys, sorry, I hope we kind of see what the kind of stuff we get out of there. We didn't get through all of it. But I usually colour code these things. So I colour code green things in here is kind of controls that we have. Like that we're using TLS, for example. Red things are things that we've identified that we don't have and we're going to have to put in. Because you can do this on existing architectures as well. Yellow things could be mitigating technical factors. Like things like if I was worried about denial of service on my microservice, but it's behind an API gateway, I'm pretty mitigated by the fact that the gateway is there in front of me, that kind of thing. But we just move on. So we've got a good idea of the kind of things that are going to come out here. So the nice thing is that because we've got a security SME, out of this we're going to get a lot of kind of suggested controls. So we're going to get things that we can then, we're going to have company standards on. So the company in an enterprise is probably going to have standards on how the certificates are created and managed.
And the SME should know that.
Yeah. They're going to have standards on how, which encryption algorithms can be used, on which hashing strategies can be used. Things that it's really going to annoy a developer and waste time if they do encryption. Oh, well, I've done encryption, I've seen this before, but they use an encryption strategy that results in the same plain text every time because they want to be able to query on this value. And and then well, I've done encryption, man. Like what are you doing? And then you come back and say, not good enough, mate. It wastes time and it creates animosity. So we want to avoid that. So straight at the beginning, day 3 in the sprint, let's identify these standards early. When we create user stories, we'll attach them as an acceptance criteria. Must use this algorithm, or at least must be reviewed by an SME.
It's interesting you say it because one of the things I've noticed is sometimes if you get some of the security people and they don't prepare for sprint 0, sprint 1, and they come in and they should prepare for these things. They should be ready with the answers because it's wasting everyone's time if they don't.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about this environment where it's a brand new project using brand new tech for the bank.
Yeah.
Or for the
the security champion should be in communication with the SME. The SME should have a bucket of things that they're gonna be ready to talk about, such as, okay, if we get into a discussion about certificate management, I should automatically know, bam, bam, bam. Here's what the company says, here's what I'm gonna say, let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes you're gonna have things you have to research, but most of the time you should be prepared. So then, one of the interesting things that the DevSecOps engineer, thank you, that the DevSecOps engineer can do is that they're a developer, right? So once we say that we have to do hashing in a certain way, once we say we have to do encryption in a certain way, DevSecOps engineer has a close relationship with the security SME. So they can be the one in the team who implements this. They're the one who can review it with them. They're the one who has a kind of vested interest in doing it properly. Rather than just giving it a developer who doesn't really care, say do encryption, use this algorithm, and they don't really either know what they're doing or they don't really care about what they're doing. So having a security champion kind of helps you do that. And like you say, we've already defined the standards, so there's a lot less chance that it's going to be done unsatisfactorily. Then what we do is we realise some of these things can't just be done there and then. Some of these things are much bigger beasts. Things like the certificate management that we had, we didn't look at it yet, but to connect to a database, you're going to have credentials. So we would have touched upon secrets management. It's a big topic. We would have started, figuring out how we're going to do that. There's a million different ways to do it. the developers probably just want to encrypt stuff in Git. The security have a chance to say, that's not good enough, or the bank has standards, or we feel like it would be more secure doing it a different way. And we write these user stories. Most important thing is, this is security work that's been identified in the first week of the sprint, that's been given a user story, and that can be triaged and estimated with the business analysts as soon as they have time. So that's a huge difference to what we saw at the beginning of the presentation, where all this stuff comes out of a review or a pen test right at the end and just gets done in a rush or risk accepted. This is turning kind of unplanned, non-functional requirements into planned, estimated work that developers are part of, and that developers enjoy and get to be like, yeah, let's learn about Vault and do it properly, that kind of thing. If we do all of this stuff, I've actually done this, I've seen it work, it does work. This is what happens. Your controls are pre-approved by IT security. You identify things before the code is written. That's kind of as far left as you can get it, I think. It's in my book. Security is implemented with each user story. So because of the triage process that you carry out, you can add criteria or threat model if you need to. Security-specific user stories are added to the backlog at the right time, not right at the end. The security team gain valuable domain knowledge, so they're involved in the design of this thing, and they're involved in the trade-offs even. They don't come in at the end of the sledgehammer and say, that's crap. They understand why decisions were made, and they develop a bit of a trust with the developers. And the security are seen as experts. They're seen as the guys who know their shit. They know crypto, they know they know OIDC or OAuth. They're going to help you rather than just tell you that everything's crap. There's reduction in unknown work, and I'm pretty sure you get a net increase in security by following these techniques.
I'd say also you have security by default.
Yeah.
I'd argue that with doing all that, you're going to get security by default, because you're going to say, during your threat model session, you're going to say, okay, if this thing breaks, what is the default state we're going to fall to? You know that right there.
Yeah, and you've got everything documented as well, so you know where all the skeletons are as well. And I mean, I've done this. I've worked in the same team where we didn't do this stuff, and the project was exactly what I said in the first slides. We did do this stuff, and the sign-off was 1 week, and the pen test flew by, and everyone was happy and hit the deadlines. So that's it. I think I'm just about on time. 3 minutes.
Can I just say, I've done the same as you, in a number of different things, and the best feeling is you get down and you do a pen test, and you say, okay, you're waiting around pins and needles, and you say, how many issues did you find? And say, well, we found a couple mediums, a few lows, and a couple informations. You're like, what, no highs, no criticals?
Yeah.
Nope, because you've already found them beforehand.
You've staked your reputation on this. You've put all these processes in. You're like, I promise you, it's going to fly by. And you're sitting there, and you're like, I hope it flies by. Well, in my experience, it does. I mean, come on. People looking at this stuff, I think it's very difficult for someone to argue against it. I know it all sounds like good stuff, but hopefully this has shown you actual techniques on how to make it work. And it's not just words on a screen anymore. It's a process, a heuristic that can be used. So, any questions?
A quick one, Chris, if I can. We were talking there about best practice and having a security SME embedded. So one of the challenges I've seen with this is kind of this concept of agile, continuous integration, working and showing and adding value. What happens, and I'm from the other side, kind of from the CISO world, what happens in a world whereby the rest of your organisation isn't adopting this fail-fast, agile way of working? So let's use an example, let's use a crypto one we were looking at earlier, where for whatever reason you're using Java, there's a reason why you can't use a particular hashing algorithm, whatever it is, you know that you'll fail fast and look at other ways of working at it. But the protracted approval process for, let's say, risk acceptance takes a month, for example. Now, your developers aren't then incentivized to continue working on that because they've moved on, let's say, to another sprint. I think the challenge I've seen before, and Jeff, you as well, the challenge I've seen is everyone within this community is built into this, and even your security guy ends up sitting, as you've seen, Jeff, with the community, but the rest of his team, his boss, are still working on, well, if I want to raise a risk acceptance for that, it takes 4 weeks.
I think the DevSecOps, I guess a lot of it came from DevOps.
Yeah.
You read the DevOps handbook, and it's the same as that for me. It's like you need that buy-in. You need at least like somebody high up enough who's going to just kind of grease the wheels for you and just say, look, for this particular project, as long as you give me, I'm going to give you some progressive people in the audit team, governance team. I'm not going to just give you carte blanche.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, as long as you can kind of satisfy this progressive forward-thinking person, that you're giving evidence and doing security, then allow you to do that. And that's what we had, luckily. So none of this would have worked if we didn't have that. We also had, if I'm honest, we had almost a full-time kind of project manager whose job was just to kind of map this cool Agile stuff we were doing with all the old forms and systems and disparate emails. And it was a full-time person's job just to maintain these email chains, and which is crazy, right? But we've all worked in those environments, and I guess, in my experience, you do need that. So these techniques are great, but if you don't have a way of doing that, like you said, it's not really going to give you that much value. That's going to stop more than threat modeling. That's going to stop you releasing to your customers anyway, right? You know.
Any more questions? Thank you, Chris.